Hi everyone, welcome to Mental Melodies. This is episode 5 of my show, and I'm Carmynn Bradley, or Wonder Woman. I do not have any thematic ties to my costume, I'm just wearing it because I like it. So happy spooky season, everybody. I'm just going to recap a little bit, probably do this every week, about who I am and what the show is about for anybody that's here, that's new. And if you're here and you've been watching past episodes, I appreciate you coming back and listening. My name, again, is Carmynn Bradley. I am a singer, a songwriter. More than anything, that's kind of like the core of who I am. Obviously, I'm also a talk show host and an actress. I mostly do film acting. I used to be a therapist, and I kind of wanted to start with that because next week I'm going to bring a guest on to the show for the first time, so that's pretty exciting. And that's kind of where I see the show going eventually, is to have people on the show and give them the opportunity to kind of tell their story and tell about their experiences with mental health. So I've been thinking about how to incorporate that into the episode, so I'm really, really excited about that. I just met with my guest yesterday and we kind of talked about things. The goal will be for people to come on and specifically talk about mental health issues. And so if you are thinking, maybe I'm interested in being on the show, just hit me up and then we can meet up and talk about things before I bring you on. Because I'm going to want to conceptualize like how your story fits in and just talk to you about maybe what you've been doing in your own life to help your mental health. Because like I've said before, this isn't going to be a therapy session, and I have to disclaim that because as a former therapist, it's easy to fall into that, and I don't want to like step on anybody's toes with regards to that. I do think that you can get benefits out of talking to anybody as long as you're seen and heard. It doesn't necessarily have to be a therapist, but there's obviously training that I've been through that makes my thought process a little different when I'm sitting down and listening to somebody's story. And so I guess that gives me a little bit of an edge if you are going to come on the show, or I can kind of help you think about things. One disclaimer I used to give to my clients, it was my favorite one. There was like this whole page. If you've been to therapy before, you know. If not, when you go to therapy, your first session is usually an assessment, and the therapist will ask you a bunch of questions, but they'll also give you all of these disclaimers. So they'll say like, don't worry, all of your information is going to be kept private. It's in a very firm server, all that stuff. But the disclaimer that was my favorite was basically like, beware, your life will change. And it's funny because I was thinking about how my heart just really does go out to, I guess we'll call it the mental health community. I've said before that I'm really like passionate about mental health. And so I feel like this show is my way of giving back in that sense, because I'm not giving back through like that's very specific career. And so I'm grateful to be able to kind of merge my two worlds and merge my music with something that I really, really care about. And so going back to that disclaimer, I do believe that if you watch this show week after week, things might start shifting for you as well. Because I think ultimately, I don't know, I feel like I say this every week. Ultimately, my goal is, I don't really know. I'm letting it kind of unfold. But I know for one thing, I like to get people thinking. And I like to think differently. I like to hear things that change my perspective, because I think if we're always thinking the same things, then we get stuck. I mean, that's pretty much self-explanatory, right? So even that thing that I said about I'm really passionate about mental health stood out to me as I was thinking about this week's show, because I noticed that there are things that I say that I just kind of always say, and it's not it might be true in the moment and it might not be. And so I guess like an example of this is if somebody asks you something about yourself and you say like, I always do this, or I do that, or I sometimes do that, but then they ask you for a follow-up example and you can't give it to them. I think that's a good little wake-up call to the fact that what you said might be just like a belief you held about yourself that may or may not be true in this moment, or it may be something that you can change, or maybe even evolve or maybe even walk away from. So like this statement that I always make about I am passionate about mental health is something that I feel like I've just said. Like I've put it on resumes, or I've said it in interviews, or like said it in the therapy room, etc. And I guess I was wondering this week, like, is that true? Like, am I passionate about mental health? I'm not sure that I am. And so I was just thinking about what that statement like really means to me, and how I could change that statement to make it more true to who I am. But I think that idea of that we just have beliefs that are so ingrained in us that we can just say them and we like know they're true without being able to find an example is pretty crazy. And like I said, I think those are points from which we can decide, like, do I want to keep believing this about myself, or do I want to change beliefs about myself? And there's a lot of power in that. So anyway, with being passionate about mental health, I was thinking that it's more nuanced than that. And in fact, I feel like my passion and my energy is actually going toward my music. I feel like, in a sense, bringing awareness to mental health, helping people heal from it is kind of like a calling, I guess, more than anything. I feel like my passion, like I said, is for my music. And through the music, people are going to hear things and feel things that maybe they needed to hear, they needed to feel. And through that, like, other people can heal. But it's not necessarily, anyway, it's just that's like a more nuanced belief. To follow up with that, I've had a lot of people come into my life lately that have been encouraging me. I think that's really cool. I was going on a run this morning, and I was just thinking about how there's like, it's almost like the closer you get to who you're supposed to be, or being comfortable in your own skin, or like you're really on the path you're supposed to be on, more and more people start coming to support you, because it's almost like the universe is like totally rooting for you and doesn't want you to mess up. So I'm using like the general you, and I'm talking about myself, because there have been, and I'm really grateful for, all these people that are coming in and encouraging me. And it's funny because I can see seeds of that being planted like a long time ago. So I feel like if you're on that point where you don't feel like you're where I'm at, where you're like, man, I really know myself, and I really feel good about what I'm doing, etc., there might be little messages that you're receiving that you kind of need to tune into. So like 4 years ago, when I was just singing at the karaoke bar, before I started working there and before I started taking my singing seriously, there were a couple of people that, actually more than a couple, but one specific one that stood out to me, who he just came up to me one day and said, never stop singing. And it felt like it didn't necessarily come from him as much as it came from like something bigger than him, and he was like meant to tell me. Because then when things got hard in the last couple of years, and I was in that relationship I've talked about that was kind of like holding me back, that little like mantra or message would come up, and it would push me to continue to sing despite what was going on. And I just think that that's like really, really powerful. And I believe that we all probably get messages like that. And the key is to like tune into them and listen to them. And something I was thinking about this week is not the meaning of life, but kind of. Just thinking about like how, let's say life is all about happiness, and that's the purpose, and that's like why we're here on earth. It's like that seems so simple. And maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. Some people say like the purpose is to glorify God if you're a Christian. Some people say it's, I don't know, to have purpose. Some people will say it's simply to work. Like if your purpose is aligned with society, then it's get a job, retire, and then die, which is kind of sad. So anyway, I'm going with the theme that happiness is our purpose. But that's so complicated. At least until you get to the point where you figure out what you want, I think happiness is really, really complicated, because there are times when you just don't really know what you want. I mean, think about how tough it is sometimes to decide what you want to eat for dinner. So then you think about, from a grand scheme of things, what you really want to do with your life and how you spend your time. That can be like a stressful decision. And so I think that I don't know, like I guess a lesson from all of that is to be willing to give yourself permission to discover what it is that makes you happy. And giving yourself permission is a big theme that I actually did want to touch on today. I was told by one of my former therapists to give myself permission, and it was for multiple things, even things that I can't think of right now. So it's one of those examples of something I know is true. But there is just a lot of things that motivate us that are not the right things. We talked about this last week. Like maybe you're motivated by guilt a lot, and I used that example last week. So if I'm motivated by guilt, then that's more about what other people want than what I want. And so in order to get to the point where I discovered what it was that I wanted, I had to overcome that motivation to where I'm not doing things for other people so much as I'm doing them for myself. And the interesting thing about that is now that I am doing things more for myself, I feel like I can do things more for other people. And I think that, at least for me, I had to go through that process of taking a step back and again, figuring out what I wanted so that I could then get to a point where I gave back. We're going to go on a break in a little bit. I'm going to come back, sing you a silly little song, and then keep talking about this stuff. See you in a few.
Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century.
This old dude here is down in the 89101 with the pimps, hookers, and crackheads. I have the ass of a 16-year-old boy. So, get you some cheesecake. I had to watch porn at the office. They paid me to watch porn at the office. Up is down, black is white, porn is good again! The official name and title is Captain Chris Cookie Cook, the Cook County Chili Cook and comedic curmudgeon, captivating crowds from coast to coast.
Hello, everyone. This is Joseph Skoda with Social Media Shows. Well, I thank all of you for your support through these last several years, and it's been a lot of fun. We've given people a voice they never had before. Now, Social Media Shows is always collaborating with our veterans to help them do things and help out the veterans who are struggling today. And we teamed up with GI Connections, connecting veterans with resources. So please consider helping and donating to this great cause because we're always doing things for veterans. So GI Connections, Social Media Shows, and you is what makes the world a better place. Once again, Joseph Skoda, proud United States Air Force veteran.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Carmynn Bradley here with Mental Melodies. As promised, I'm going to sing you a silly little song called 2023, and then I'll talk about how it kind of ties into things, and then I have a song at the end as well that's a little more serious, I guess. Here we go. Well, it was 2021 when you and me met in the middle of the day. You were looking kinda cute in your red and black suit on that sunny November Las Vegas day. It was early 2022 when I said to you I'd like to share my living space. Then it was early 2023 when you married me, and it ended pretty much the same way. 'Cause it was early 2023 when you said to me I want you out the very next day. 2021. In 2022, in 2023. Well, it was in that time that we shared a bed and did what sharing bed people do. We fell in love and we went places. Eventually we said I do. Well, that was the first time that I had said that. Gosh, I must have really loved you. But I'll never forget when you said to me that I no longer meant something to you. What about 2021? And 2022. Well, anyway, I moved on and I burned the letters. Let's forget about 2021. And 2022. Cause 2023 is all about me. Thank you. Oh man, I make myself laugh, which is great. I have been, thank you Maria, overthinking my last song that I'm going to play for you in the last segment a lot this week. This one I just played for you, I wrote in like 30 minutes. And it's interesting because it's kind of it is like a metaphor. Okay, it's not, I need to reel it back for a second. It is a metaphor for my last relationship, but it's also not a metaphor because it's straightforward. I literally went through like how quickly the relationship lasted. So one of those like angels that I've talked about who's been coming into my life and supporting me in my music was telling me this week, like, let go of that story. You don't need to talk about it anymore. Like, move forward. And I agree with him, but then at the same time, I think it's important to talk about our stories. It's also important to take the time to process them. I did have a friend who said to me, like, wow, you moved on really, really quickly, because I don't, other than on this show when I'm talking about how it connects to my story, I'm not reveling in it, I'm not sad about it, I am like excited about where I'm at. And so that's like the arc that I wrote about in the song, and it just came out, I don't know, it was like just this quick little story. It was a quick little relationship, and I really did. I moved on. I literally burned all the letters. We used to write a letter together or for each other every week, which sounds really cute, but it was quite a chore at some point. But I took all of them, hundreds of them, and I literally burned them. And I talked about like the power of burning stuff and intentions a few episodes ago. Like, if you're holding on to old energy, let it go. If you have old clothes that remind you of a time you felt fat or anything, let it go. We hold on to things too much, I think, because we're too attached to money. So anyway, yeah, the message of that song is just like, what about that? Like, I thought I meant something to you, but then at the same time, it's like you can't revel in that. You can't sit in that sadness. You can't like wonder why it didn't work out. You have to just kind of pick up and move on. And I think that's really important, to be able to shift away from that. And so, yes, going back to what I was like saying before I sang the song, I was talking about permission, and really that, I think, that was kind of the struggle for me at the end of the relationship, was I really had to figure out what I wanted, right? It was that whole struggle, and I do believe that that relationship helped me to figure out what I want and to really like reaffirm it, because it was kind of like a test where I felt like, I've told people I felt like I had these like two things I had to choose from, like having a family or being a career woman. And interestingly enough, I see that pop up all the time, specifically with female comedians that I see, either on Facebook or like Taylor Tomlinson. I went to go see her live here in Las Vegas, and she talked a lot about that. The whole tour actually was called the Have It All Tour, and then it got me thinking about that. Like, a lot of women believe they can't have it all, A, or B, they feel like pressure to have it all. And it's a journey to get to that point where you can really like admit to yourself, like, this is what I want, and it might be different from what other people want. My life is definitely very different from my sister, for example. And like, I grew up with a sister who was very close in age with me, and we would talk a lot about our future together and how we were going to have kids, and then like throw Thanksgivings together and all this stuff and go on vacations. And now we see each other like once or twice a year, and she's living that life that we had planned and I'm not. And even though I knew I wanted it throughout the last couple of years, I still felt myself, like, I don't know, being pulled away from what you're supposed to do, or what society says you're supposed to do, or what friends are doing, or again, like what your family is doing. And I don't know, it seems kind of silly to say I knew that I didn't want that, and yet I still tried. But at the same time, I think that if everything happens for a reason, which sometimes I believe and sometimes I'm not sure, then I had to go through that test, because now not only do I know what I want, but I don't question it anymore. And I don't say, well, I want this, but maybe I'll change my mind. I just go with what I want, and I wake up and I dedicate my life to my music, and I think that's like what I'm here to do. And so I had to go through this period that was really important. So like I said, to the people telling me like, move on, don't talk about it anymore. Yes, absolutely. Move on. Forget about it in a sense. Burn the letters. Be you, but also own your story, because I think our stories are so important. And that's something that, like, when I start bringing on guests, we're going to talk about how those stories are important. I mentioned narrative therapy. I think I brought it up last week. And I talked about the power of the story, and the power of how you see your story, and the power of being able to change it, which is crazy. Because so a PTSD brain, for example, is one that imagine that you have like a timeline of all of your memories, and you have the really bad ones or the really traumatic ones, and those ones are stronger. / like they pop out at you. Like a literal PTSD symptom is nightmares or like disturbing images even when you are awake. And so the strength of your story when you have PTSD lies in the traumatic elements of your story, to the point where you start to forget that there was any good. So coming out of like an abusive household growing up, for example, most people who come out of an abusive household begin to tell that story and only that story. And so that's the beauty of like going in and talking to a therapist, or maybe coming on a show and talking to me, is that you can start to see that while it does validate you to be able to say, I went through this, I was very scared at this time, I was victimized by somebody, blah, blah, blah. All of those things are so important to talk about, and you have to talk about them to get that energy out of your body, which is something I've mentioned before too. But if that's all that you do, is you're on repeat for the rest of your life talking about all of these bad things that happened to you, then again, you're stuck, right? And then those beliefs start to pop up. Like, you believe that you are a victim. And even if it's not something that you've said out loud, it's something that's ingrained in you, right? And energy does attract energy. So if you are telling that story, and that's the only way that you see your life, like you go back to high school and you see bad things and you forget that you also had friends and you were involved in all these different things, whatever. There's, I think, probably always good in all situations. Maybe there are extreme situations where it's like it was only bad. In that case, find the good in your present moment instead. I think there's always ways to find good. And I, especially when you get to a point where you're really aware, you can create your own destiny and your own, like day-to-day emotions. Talked about this a few weeks ago, like the power of being able to choose happiness, because at some point it really is a choice, Obviously there are days you're overcome by irritation, or like even today I was overcome by a good mood. I don't know if people relate to this, but it was kind of annoying, where I was just like, I felt like I just like needed to dance it out, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, can I just be like on the ground, like not necessarily in a good mood or a bad mood, but just here. And I was just like, go away. So that's why I have my guitar, because otherwise I'd just be talking to myself and laughing at myself. I'm sure my roommates think I'm an interesting person. But that was my day today. So anyway, I can sense my director's about to give me my break. You have 2 minutes left, so we're just going to go on a break now. And take some deep breaths, and I'll see you back in a couple minutes.
John is an employee at one of the most famous firms in the city of New York, so his job is very hectic, and he realized that it is necessary for him to go and finally take a vacation. But he went on a vacation without planning out the details, and wasn't able to truly enjoy where he went because he had to think about so many things that he didn't plan for. Instead of enjoying his time away from work, he came back with more stress that he was not able to take full advantage of his vacation. But this year, a coworker suggested him to try World Ventures this time to make his vacationing more enjoyable and less stressful. They do not require you to plan anything outside of your transportation, which is also available at discounted rates. Your stay, your transport, and many meals are planned by the club. John liked the idea very much. He tries World Ventures, and his experience with the club was amazing, as he made many friends there with whom he had a great time. John recommends that everyone should try this club, as they are the best in business. See how the VIP-vacation-club.com can give you the right experience without all the hassle. Enjoy the VIP experience that only World Ventures provide.
Got Films is a full-service production company that provides motion picture quality content and production services for use in the film and TV industry. Looking for a seasoned crew, high-quality equipment, or other production services for your film, TV, commercial, corporate convention, sports, news, or interview project? Your search stops here. Some of our projects include NASCAR, American Restoration, Pawn Stars, Counting Cars, Top Chef, BattleBots, Forge and Fire, and Street Outlaws. We have also produced over 60 feature films and documentaries. We're ready for all your needs. Whatever your project, whatever your budget, big or small, Got Films got you. GotFilms.com.
Las Vegas, here we come!
I can't believe we're all moving to Vegas.
I know, right? It's a dream come true.
Wow, super creepy dude.
Mason, stop. I think he heard you.
What if someone walked up in the back of his semi?
She's gone. Someone took her.
Who's that creepy trucker?
What are you doing?
They call me Mother Trucker.
Welcome back, Mental Melodies. This is our third segment of our 5th episode. That's crazy. This is Carmynn Bradley here, and I was kind of losing myself there at the end of the last segment, so I've collected myself again. Hopefully you just enjoy that. I have heard that I have one of those smiles that makes other people smile, so I think it's good to be smiling. And I guess just to take it back to the song that I sang and kind of like the message of it, I think, like I was saying, it is important to sit with those negative emotions and to feel them, right? Like, just because I'm at this point where it's easy for me to move on, and in fact the story is more of a happy one to me now than a sad one, it doesn't mean that I didn't have my moments where I sat with it. And I think that's often the mistake that people make, is they don't give themselves enough time. I think it doesn't even have to be as long as you think, as long as you are really sitting with it. And everybody's different. So maybe you're in a really long relationship and you need a whole year to recover from it, or maybe you just need a couple of weeks to veg out and cry and process and then move on. And I think that that is just a really, really beautiful thing. And I think that life is, it's about love and loss. It's not about just love or just loss. It's like you can't have one without the other. I've already kind of started thinking about my song for next week. And it's going to be kind of about that. Like, you can't have the good without the bad. You know, you can't have the good without the sad and the happiness without that. Like, if you don't give time to those emotions, I've always believed this. I remember talking about this when I was like 17, before I knew anything. I thought I knew everything then. But I remember talking about that and comparing myself to people in my life who I felt like were really good at sweeping things under the rug, which is a common sentiment for people like me who have stories like we do, right? Like when I was talking to JC yesterday about some of the stuff we're going to bring in next episode, I related so much to what he was saying. And it's just like you take an evil stepfather and an evil aunt and you replace them, and it's essentially the same story in a different place or a different country. And that's the beauty of being on like a healing pathway, is you start to meet people who have been brave enough to talk about their stories, because voicing them is what essentially takes their power away, right? So going back to that timeline, if you're stuck in those really strong like negative memories, you have to talk about them. You have to go see a therapist or have friends who will listen to you, or I don't know, write about them, whatever. You have to voice them, because it's taking away their power, right? Like if you think about a secret, I hate secrets. I absolutely do not like being told, don't tell anybody this. I just like, that is not my jam. I do not like it. I don't like holding on to something that's on my chest. Like I have something to say to somebody that I was supposed to say last week that I didn't say. It takes up brain space. And as an artist, my brain space is probably the most valuable thing that I have. The thoughts that I have, the emotions that I feel, and how I put them into my music or into my show, that is so valuable. So if there's something eating up my energy, like, gosh, I have to say it. I have to get rid of it. I have to not lean into that fear of how people are going to respond to me, which is huge. And that's something I've talked about over the last few episodes, and something I was thinking about today before I came here, of that feeling, right? Like fear, we don't know if it's anxiety and we shouldn't follow it, or if it's like this voice inside of us that's saying don't do it. And it's so hard to tell the difference, right? And so the takeaway we've had in past weeks is like, well, the only way to know is make a decision. Don't sit there in the, well, I don't know what it is, so I don't know if I should or I shouldn't. Just pick one and then you'll figure it out. And that's kind of scary, but the more that you do that, the more that you'll be able to determine like which fear voice is talking right now, because fear is valuable. Like we don't have negative emotions for no reason. Like if you are afraid of a bear that's going to eat you, you are afraid for a reason, because your body is being told to run, right? But when you're in a constant state of fear, so in that example of PTSD where you have a timeline and you have all these different memories, and many are good but many are bad, and the bad ones are really, really strong, what that does is it puts your body into fight or flight, so you're constantly in fight or flight. So like I go back to my early 20s when I was just starting being a high school teacher, and I was having panic attacks every single day. I was having nightmares every single night. I was waking up in the middle of the night. Like I was never resting, and I would constantly be running because I would have flashbacks of my childhood, or like even just a feeling of something like sinister, and I would just literally run. And that was after. Anyway, that's irrelevant. But it took me a really long time to get to a spot where I could rest and relax. I was just like revving. And a lot of people live that way, right? Like a lot of people, I've talked about like being stuck on the hamster wheel and like in the rat race. Even that is a form of fight or flight. Like it doesn't even have to be PTSD. It could just be simply that you are so stressed out. Like teachers, for example, like have to get up at 5 a.m. and prep. Oh, there's this great slide that my friend Faustino, if you know him, he plays piano in town. He's a teacher, and he was talking about like how teachers have to get up and present like 6-hour-long presentations, engaging their audience the whole time. They have to prep for it and do all these different things and have all these different meetings. Like most people, if you have one meeting in a day, that's enough for a job. But if you really conceptualize like what teachers are doing, it's actually insane. And so that kind of lifestyle puts you in that fight or flight where you're just so anxious and you're tired, but you're not allowed to be tired because you don't ever really have time to reset, and you're just constantly like pulling from a place of no energy. That's what PTSD is, but perhaps even worse. I don't know. Everybody's on their own like wavelength, right? My little rant is getting ahead of me. Okay, so what I was talking about was this, like the song that I wrote with the fast love. The last song I'm going to talk about is about slow love, and it applies to more than just relationships. So obviously, like, you know, we oftentimes, not everybody does this. I don't know why there are some people who get into long-term relationships for like 8 years and others of us who just like can't get past a year. I don't know if there's something in our souls or what it is. But anyway, many of us can relate to this fast burning love, right? Like it starts really quickly and it fizzles out just as quickly. And it's kind of like this blink of an eye. And then you're kind of like lost with your footing for a while, and then you have to start over alone again, and then you're like looking for it again, and then you find it, and then you get in it, and then it's fast, and then it ends quickly. And I have been in this space in my life where I want to take the stuff that I've kind of applied to who I am and apply that to relationships as well. Like, I want things that last a really long time, not just romantic relationships, like friendships as well. Relationships where people have space to exist. Like that's the issue with codependent relationships or like trauma bonds, if you've heard of them. I heard from somebody, again on Instagram, so like take with it what you will, but that most relationships are trauma bonds in our world. And so I think for people like me who haven't been in anything for like a super long time, it's because I couldn't get myself to settle for something that was a trauma bond. And there's different veins of thought for what a trauma bond is. I won't like get in that today, but essentially if you are being like triggered constantly by your partner, or you feel like you're stuck in kind of like a washing machine, then probably you are in patterns that you can't break with that person. And it depends, because you can break patterns with another person, but it has to take one who's willing and another who is willing. If you're the person who's like listening to this show or going to therapy or doing things to increase your own awareness, and you're pushing forward toward your own growth, and you're with somebody who isn't that way, you're going to be pulled back again and again. There was this presentation I did back in class, like as a freshman, where like I stood on top of a chair and I tried to pull my friend up with me. I was like, this is pretty hard. And then he just pulled me down. And it was just to show how easy it is to take somebody down to your level and how difficult it is to lift somebody up. So that just kind of reminds me of like my purpose on this show. Like I used to be the kind of person who would try to just carry everybody along with me, right? And that was kind of what it felt like in my last relationship. Like I talked about how it was really a test to see like what I really wanted. And I felt like I could just feel it inside of me. Like I know what I want, and I know that I want music, and I know that I want to be affluent in music, in guitar, in instruments, in songwriting, in my voice, all of these things. And I felt like I had to fight for it. And I felt like I was dragging my people along with me on this journey that they didn't want to be in, because they wanted to just throw their hands back and like sit down and watch football. And like, that's totally fine. That's just not the kind of person that I am. What was I saying? Oh yes, so anyway, I'm thinking about what I said in the beginning of the episode about how like if you hang out with me for long enough, I think it would be impossible to keep living your life the same way, because I do that. I make people think. So if you're watching and you're starting to notice that there are relationships in your life that are holding you back, like, I don't know, I think you really have to think about those things. And it goes back to that fear. Like, we don't leave relationships we're in that we should leave because we're afraid of whatever. I think most of us are afraid of being alone. But there are just so many other ways, not to fill that loneliness, but to find connection that are different from a romantic relationship. And I think that's one thing that's like preached to us, especially as young girls, or at least as a young girl myself, like thinking about all the princess movies and how like you're just like looking for your prince. And then that's what my sister and I talked about, like finding your prince. And then once you do that, then what? You have Thanksgiving every year, like life is over. It kind of feels that way. I think we don't really have a true concept of how long life is too when we have that plan, because it's like now I'm in my 30s, and when I was in my 20s, I thought that things went downhill from here, but I feel myself going up, and I feel like I have an inordinate amount of time left to do the things that I want to do. Sometimes I feel like I don't have enough time, but anyway, is it time? It's time. I can almost feel it internally now. I'm becoming one with this hour. But anyway, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going on a break, and I'll be back in a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Deacon T with Modern Word Ministries. It's great to be with you today. Just a short little promo for our show. Every Sunday morning we have service, and you can follow us at 10 a.m. Pacific time on modernwordministries.org. And if you missed us or you want to see some of our older messages, go ahead and check us out on socialmediashows.com every single morning at 9 a.m. It's a great way to kick off your day, get a little bit of the word in you, get something uplifting, get you started off on your way. If you're looking for prayer or you need some help, reach out to us. If you go to our website, again, that's modernwordministries.org, you can interact with me via telephone, via DM, text message, whatever you want. I'll get right back to you. So if you need prayer, you need help, you just need somebody to talk to, Modern Word Ministries is here for you. We are your church in the community. So until you see you next time, be blessed, everybody. Bye-bye.
Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Space Wars: Quest for the Deep Star is an epic sci-fi adventure.
Do what needs to be done.
An edge-of-your-seat wild ride.
We have company.
Tons of popcorn-munching fun. 5 stars. A love letter to the sci-fi films of the 70s and 80s. With plenty of action and fun for all. You need to see it. You really do.
The captain just decided it's time to go.
I am ready for a sequel. Experience a bold new adventure. Space Wars: Quest for the Deep Star.
A good old-fashioned adventure.
Now on digital and DVD.
What affects your credit? The answer can be many things. Let's take a look at a few of the most common factors and how they can impact your credit. Credit history. In order to have a credit score, you need to have open and active credit accounts. This gives you the opportunity to build a credit score and get approved for larger purchases such as a car or a home. So it's important to have a responsible record of debt repayment. Available credit and usage. The rule of thumb is to use 30% of your available credit to minimize the impact of debt on your credit score. In other words, the less credit you use, the better. Monthly on-time payments. By making sure your monthly payments are paid on time, you could boost your credit score. Late payments, however, may bring your score down. Errors on your credit report. Check your credit report regularly to make sure it's accurate. If there are any errors or signs of identity theft, report them immediately to the appropriate credit bureau. Applications for credit. If you're applying for credit, filling out several applications in a short amount of time may hurt your credit score. It's ideal to keep the applications to a minimum. However, there is an allowable shopping window for a mortgage. Remember, a good credit score could possibly save you in interest payments. If your credit score needs some improvement, however, consider starting with the basics mentioned here. And when you're ready to buy your dream home, give New American Funding a call. We'll help you find a home loan that works for you and your unique situation.
Welcome back. This is Carmynn Bradley here with Mental Melodies. This is the last segment that went by so quickly. Maria and I, during the break, were talking about my natural internal clock. And I remember I was actually thinking about how to I don't know if teach is the right word, but maybe. I am like a natural teacher, and I feel like in some sense I am informing people. And so I talked a lot in last week's about how like I kind of trained myself to be able to like finish projects, right? And I mentioned like ADHD and the struggle with choosing. And so I can see how some stuff I've been talking about in last week's and stuff I talked about today can kind of like come together. And so anyway, that relates to this like internal clock of mine, because I can think about all these things that I've practiced in order to get to a point where I can host a talk show or I can finish a song. And I think that that relates to this idea also of being able to have slow building relationships, romantic friendships, whatever, just like things that last long, because this journey toward like healing from mental health issues, or I don't know, just even becoming, it doesn't even have to be that. It could just be like you decide that you want to become a different person, or you want to figure out who you are, like whatever is your driving force for you want to make some kind of a change is totally valid. But it's not something that happens overnight. And so I think of like multiple examples that this works for, like losing weight, or even just like improving your muscle mass. You go to the gym one day and you come home and then you're like checking. We used to do this as teenagers. My sister and I were like, oh, are abs feeling strong today? And like expecting them to change after one day, and that simply doesn't happen. And one word that's been huge for me in the past 5-6 years has been consistency. And huge for me in the past year has been consistency. That it could be 5 minutes every single day, and that's going to make way more of a difference than 1 hour one day when you just like fizzle out, right? So like it's that same concept of relationships that are happening too quickly. If you start something and you're not eating and you're not sleeping and you're so passionate, which sounds kind of like me, but you're going to fizzle out. So I have to learn, even in this like constant drive for like more songs and all this stuff that I'm doing, I always have to take a step back and ask myself, like, am I resting enough? Am I setting myself up for success for like a long career, or am I just like trying to get things done? And anyway, it's all about finding that balance. And I think this is a good time to sing this new song that's about the other side of the coin, like wanting something slow with somebody. I think I'm going to stand for this one because I'm shaking a little bit. I think I'm just cold. Pull this back. Alrighty, here we go. Mom, if you're there, hello. She said she was going to watch today. Had to give a shout out to her because she's been one of my biggest cheerleaders. I like think about how crazy it is sometimes. Like when you're looking at my life from the outside, just like all these career shifts, it can sound kind of crazy. But my mom always just takes it in stride, and she's like, yeah, you're going to be a rock star. Like, of course. So that's pretty cool. Again, with those angels and those cheerleaders. So anyway, here's this song. What am I going to call it? Slow Burning Love. It might change. I want a slow burning love with you, dear. I want a slow burning love this time. I hope one day you'll hold me in the dark. But for now I'll just love you from afar. In the meantime, I will answer your calls. 'Cause I want that slow burning love with you. So I'll wait for that slow burning love. And I'll wait for you, my dear. You know that I can see you, and I know It's in the look in your eyes. It's by the way that you smile at me. So I'll wait. I'll wait. I'll wait for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for you. For you. Thank you. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? That's what I was thinking. That's what I was going to guess. All right. So thank you again for your eyes and your ears. That's my new song called Slow Burning Love. The beauty of this is that I have like committed to writing an album. And so this show gives me kind of a deadline every week to have a new song. So I think that the versions of the songs on the show are kind of like drafts. Though I do go through version after version after version until I present it on the show, I know that when I record them, they'll be a little bit different. So I just appreciate that you're here, like listening to the raw versions of these songs, like as I discover my style and just like get better at the guitar and all of those things. And I just think it's awesome that I made this decision like back in February to really go at this. And because I believed in myself, like things have really been happening, and that's just really, really cool. So I'm just really, really grateful for that. And again, just like the takeaway with the first song I sang and then this song, you can tell that the tone is different. They're both happy, but in a different way, you know, but there's also this tension in the last song that I think is pretty cool. I sent this to my other director and he was like, those keys don't really go together, but you make them work. And so he was going to give me suggestions for how to change it. And I said, well, you said I made it work, so I'm going to go with it. Because this like artistic freedom and creative expression thing, I'm just like really rolling with it. And sometimes I feel like my songs, I've said this about the show, but they're like bigger than me, or that like sometimes I'm not as, maybe I don't know all of the musical things to support what I'm doing, but these songs are like already inside of me. And all I have to do is get up and like commit to writing them, and then they kind of write themselves. Except this one was pretty hard, and I think it's because it's that shift. Like I've been learning this lesson for a really long time about taking things slow and about consistency, but I still have to constantly remind myself of that. This is something I've said in last episodes, like I'll be giving people advice and it'll sound like I know exactly what I'm talking about and I have it all figured out, and that is simply not the case. I have to constantly remind myself, like consistency, small bits at a time, like follow through on what you say you're going to do and all of these things. And then sometimes I still freak out, like that story I said where I was like self-sabotaging during the second week, right? And I have these moments where I have to take a step back and reevaluate what's important to me, and I'm constantly just reaffirming like what I meant to do and how I want to spend my time, like right down to that minute, like micro level. So anyway, I'm Carmynn Bradley. This is the 5th episode of Mental Melodies, and like I said, I'm just appreciate you listening and watching. If you want to sponsor the show, please reach out to admin at socialmediashows.com. You can follow me. Most of my stuff is on Instagram, Carmynn_Bradley. You can kind of see what I'm up to. And I think that's it. Next week we're going to have a guest, so look out for that, and I'll start conceptualizing like how I'm going to do that. And if you're interested, I've had a few people reach out to me. If you're interested, you're really interested, email me carmynbradley@gmail.com and I will reach out to you with a phone call, or we can go get coffee or something like that. But I want you to think about 2 things before you do reach out to me. Like, generally, why do you want to be on the show? Meaning, what do you want to get out of it? And then what will your message be? And if you can answer those 2 questions, then reach out to me and we can talk. And that is that. I will see you next week. Thank you, everyone. When you and me met in the middle of the day, you were looking kinda cute in your red and black suit on that sunny November Las Vegas day. It was early 2022 when I said to you I'd like to share my living space. Then it was early 2023 when